Hey everyone, so I told you that I was going to do a testimony of faith video, and it's taken me a while to get this prepared. Public speaking is not really one of my strengths. I would have preferred to sing this to you guys instead, but that wasn't an option today. So I have this testimony written out here, and I wrote everything down because I didn't want to forget any of the details. So hopefully you can stay and watch till the end. It's going to take about 10 minutes, and I'm going to get started right away. So I'm going to start off by telling you a little bit about my background. So growing up, I was raised in the Catholic Church, and my father was a strict Catholic. My mother was the polar opposite and not religious at all. So I was baptized as a baby and received all of my sacraments, including confirmation, which is very similar to being born again. And my dad and my grandma were my two biggest religious influences. So I was given a vast amount of resources and books on how to pray, understanding scripture, lives of saints, etc. And I always prayed as a kid, even though I didn't always understand all of the information that I was given. But going to church always made me feel very uplifted. It made me feel connected to God, not so much to other people, but I enjoyed singing along to the music. It was very uplifting, and it always made me feel really happy on Sundays. But when I was no longer living under my dad's roof, I stopped going to church. And shortly after that, I got my first serious boyfriend who was a Buddhist, and I moved into his parents' house. And they took their religion very seriously, and they made sacrifices to their Buddha throughout the day, every day. And I learned a lot about his religion during the 5 years that we were together. We also had many Muslim friends that were close to my boyfriend, so I also learned a lot about their religion during that time that we were together as well. But after we broke up, I was alone, and I felt very depressed, and I felt lost, and I felt like life was pointless. And I looked for comfort and answers to life's big questions through boyfriends and friends, but no one could help me. No one had the answers I was looking for. No one could give me the love that I needed. So I cried and I prayed to God to send me a husband because I believed that this would solve all of my problems. And just after I said that prayer, this amazing guy appeared in my life. And I didn't have to chase him or persuade him. I had all of his attention right away, and he wanted to know me. And I believed that he was the answer to my prayer. He was more than I could ever dream of. He was tall, he was handsome, he was kind, and he was a Christian. And I had never dated anyone like him before, and so of course I fell in love with him right away, and I wanted to marry him. But after seeing him for a while, things seemed to be sort of at a standstill and not progressing as quickly as I anticipated. So I decided it was time to have this conversation with him, like, what are we? Because I wanted to know what I meant to him and where we stand. And he said to me, Brandy, I think you're a great person, but it's not going to work out. And I was just devastated. I was completely heartbroken, and I couldn't understand why God would answer my prayer and then break my heart. So this forced me to look very deeply into myself and evaluate my life. And I spent many years after that doing that soul searching that people always talk about. And I started to question if God even exists, and does God hate me? And I felt very empty inside, and I filled that void with alcohol and boyfriends and going out. And even though I was always busy and I always had a date, I still felt alone and hopeless and very depressed. So one day a friend invited me to a Christian church, and so I agreed and went. And during the service, the people started walking to the front of the church to be saved. And my friend encouraged me to go up, and I felt very shy, but I went anyways. And when I got to the front of the church, the pastor asked me if I repented of my sins and if I would commit myself to Jesus from that day forward. So I agreed, and I made that vow. And just like my confirmation in the Catholic Church at 13, I was anointed with oil. And at that moment, I couldn't help myself. I just began bawling my eyes out in front of the whole church. And I can tell you that certainly my consciousness was heightened to another level after that. And I understand that everybody's experience is different. And for me, I started to change after that. And I went through a variety of emotions that actually led to me breaking down and felt like I died and was living a brand new life. My desire to understand God became all that I cared about. And I realized that it had never occurred to me that I had spent a lot of time understanding other people's religions and other people's gods, but I didn't even understand my own. I had never even read the Bible or could even explain Christianity to someone else. So since then, I have spent 11 years reading the Bible, and I have finally found the answers to those burning questions that I had for so long, like why do bad things happen to good people? Has God abandoned us? Why is there so much sadness in the world? Does God hate me? Where do we go after we die? And I finally understand what that void in me really was, and I no longer looked for a husband to fill that void. So after things started to unfold, I went to visit my grandparents, and my grandpa was very old and sick, and I remembered asking him when I was young what he thought about God. And I remember he told me that he didn't think that God cared about any of us, and that made me feel really, really sad. And that stuck with me for years. I never forgot that. So my grandma, his wife, was a strict Catholic and a member of the Catholic Church, and my grandpa would never go to church with her, and I never understood why. So I was really excited to share my good news with him, and I pulled him aside and I said, Grandpa, you're not going to believe this. I went to this church and I got saved, and I feel really, really different. And Grandpa, Jesus is real. And the biggest lie the devil ever told is that he doesn't exist. And I said, Grandpa, I think you need to be saved. And he began to cry. And he said, Brandy, I've been watching church on TV, and I said the salvation prayer. And then we both just started crying. And I was really relieved we had that conversation because shortly after that, my grandpa passed away. And he was remembered as a very kind, humble, and peaceful man. And I couldn't understand why someone like him would spend his entire life feeling so apathetic until his old age. And I wanted to know more about my family, so I did a little bit of research. All I knew about my grandpa was that he lived in Ukraine and he was sent to Austria during World War II, and his family was separated, but I didn't know why. So after researching, I learned that there were a number of Jews in Ukraine at the time, and Hitler wanted them annihilated, so they were sent to concentration camps in Austria and separated from their families. I also learned that the meaning of my grandpa's name is a free man. So I know a lot of people lost their faith in God after witnessing unspeakable things during World War II. And it breaks my heart to think that there are actually people out there that live their entire lives believing this lie and not really understanding the gospel. The gospel actually means the good news. And the good news is that God does love us, and he loves all of us. My grandma told me that when they were younger, she wanted my grandpa to take her to Hawaii for a vacation, but my grandpa made her go to Germany with him instead. And my grandma said the only thing he wanted to do while he was in Germany was climb a mountain. And I understand now why that was so important to him, and I'm happy that he was able to see that wish come true. I think that there's evidence of God's love all around us, but sometimes life hardens us, or we get so busy and we get so caught up, we just can't see it. And I know that some people don't have a church or a friend to talk to, and they feel alone. And sometimes churches can disappoint people and turn them away. And I've had some people tell me that they go to church every week and they do all the right things, but they're still single and they're still alone, or they're still struggling. And I want to be very, very clear here that Christianity is not an easy path to walk. Some people describe it as enrolling in warfare, spiritual warfare. And I can tell you that I have never experienced so much opposition on a scale like this until I became born again. But despite all of my trials and tribulations, I'm still very thankful for being raised in the Catholic Church and for being given the opportunity to know Jesus and be welcomed into his family. I'm thankful to the Christian Church for reaffirming my faith and saving my soul, because I don't know where I would be without Jesus today, and I really do not want to know. I'm thankful for God's mercy and for being given the chance of salvation. And I'm also thankful that after all these years, I still have my faith, which is a gift, and I'm happy that I'm able to share that gift with you today. All right, so that is the end of my testimony. I did ask you guys to submit any questions that you had for me, and I did have a couple questions. So one of the questions that I had was about my preference in music. And here's what I would like to say about that. First of all, I've never proposed to be any sort of religious teacher or guide. The only teachings I follow are that of Jesus, and the only guide I follow is the Bible. That's the only guide I trust in. I'm simply a believer who is sharing my stories, my struggles, my victories, and my faith with you here in my blog. So, you know, as a singer growing up, I dreamed of being a rock star. And I was always drawn to very deep, heavy music that was like thought-provoking, not like the superficial pop music that was on the radio when I was in high school. Because I could really relate to this deep music. Not all of it, but some of it really impacted me. And when I was growing up, we didn't have social media, so we never really got to know rock stars. The only time you ever really got to know one was in a Rolling Stone magazine interview. And yeah, we heard rumors about, you know, these people, but I never believed any of them were true. I really didn't get a glimpse into any celebrity's life until I joined social media or Instagram like in 2018. I grew up on rock, metal, rap, and all kinds of non-Christian music. So now that I'm on a different path, would that give me the right to shun someone whose music I played all through these difficult years of my life? Would that give me the right to say you're a horrible person that's going to hell and I'm better than you? I don't think that a lot of people, or I don't know if a lot of people realize, but it's our job as Christians to spread love and faith and to bring others to Jesus, not repel them and turn them away. So yeah, I did go to a couple of rock concerts in the last few years and got to experience getting smushed in the crowd. And after my last rock concert, I decided that was going to be my last. I can still be respectful of other people's art. I'm just on a different path in my life now. So that's all. Okay, and the other question that I had was for my opinion on the atrocities that were committed against the indigenous children by the Catholic Church. And what I want to say about that is that I think what took place is absolutely horrific and heartbreaking. Corruption is inevitable in this world, and unfortunately our churches are not immune as well. And when our safe places are defiled, it can really debilitate people's faith. And I know that there are people out there that don't have families, or they don't have any family or money, and some of these people, they're just living on faith alone. And so when we live in a world of non-believers and we hear stories like this, I know it can really destroy people's faith in God. And that's why I think it's so important for believers to support others and encourage them. And that's really why I wanted to share my message of faith with you today. Because faith is believing in something that you can't see or touch. And that's what separates us from non-believers. And I don't believe there's anything stupid or crazy about having faith. So I hope that you find value and encouragement in my message today. Thanks so much for watching my video, and I'll see you guys later.